To race. Get our next guest on the line here. Good morning, Pee-wee Flick. How are you this morning?
Fantastic, Don. How are you?
Well, I know we're going to be good because having you on, our ratings are going to skyrocket.
Oh, no kidding. Are you worldwide or not?
We will be after this. You know, I don't ever remember you being serious, so I don't expect you to be serious today. So we're just going to kind of do this maybe tongue-in-cheek. One of your old buddies here is going to ask you a couple of questions about some of the things. Carol, ask him on this sheet we gave him. Now, he claims to be 35 years old. He's been married 34 years, and he's been racing 36 years. Now, Pee-wee, apparently math is not one of your strong points, but perhaps it's a secret and you didn't want anybody to know, and if that's the case, I'm sorry.
I must have been those classes I kept cutting. I thought it was study hall, but evidently it was math.
Pee-wee, you wrote here about how you started, and I know that you'll be talking about that tonight, but share with the folks how you first got into racing. It's kind of funny.
Well, it was funny. I had helped these couple of boys I went to school with, and they had a car, and I had helped them some and so on, and went a couple times, and it was this night. It was back when South Park ran that type of car on Wednesday nights, and so they seemed to insist that I go with them this night, and so I did, and we got down there and sit around, and driver didn't show up, and I kept getting nervous, and I said to them, I said, well, you know, where's your driver? And they said, well, they didn't know. So they started to race, and that was a pretty far tow for us. And they're getting ready to start to race, and I said, brothers, and I said, well, what are you going to do? Leave your car set? I have to. And I said, well, why don't one of you drive them, you know? And, well, their wives, if they found out, and all this and that, and they had easy. I'll tell you what, if I had a helmet, I'd drive it. Man, that helmet come out of nowhere, you know. So I went out, and of course, this whole business, you know, you've watched races for a long time in the stands. It looks easy, and by luck, I did have to start last in the heat race, and it hustled me to keep up, let alone pass anybody, and that sort of irritated me. And in there, and I crawled up on the roof, and I started watching the other guys see what I was doing wrong, and so got out in the next heat, and I managed to pass 2 or 3 guys, and by feature time, I was moving along pretty good. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think we ended up in the front 5, but so then I was their driver from then on, and it turned out that they had fired the other guy. On Duke, he had run into the infield and hit a car or something. I don't know, don't remember exactly, but they knew he wasn't coming all along. It was sort of a set-up deal. Basically how I got started.
You mean somebody got over on you instead of you getting over on them all the time?
Yeah, Don, and that taught me, you know, always stay one jump ahead because people will take advantage of you.
A little bird told me that the only reason you come to Lernerville is to aggravate me. Is that true?
Oh, I can't believe anyone would even say that about me, especially to you, you know, about you.
Pee-wee, what would you say was your best year in racing?
Oh, the best year, well, the old Latrobe racetrack, probably that year there, basically it would either be Franny Geyer would win or I would. And that was a real good year. And then in 72, 73 with the Camaro, those were good years.
Weren't you the first one to have a new style body with your Camaro? And like you said, around 72, most of the guys were running the old style 57 Chevy, 60 Chevys. You came in with the Camaro. Wasn't that the first one in the area?
Bob Waring and I both had them. Dunk built Bob one that winter, and I built one.
And how long did the Flick family race team have that Camaro?
Oh, up until 2 years ago.
So that was what, about 14, 15 years?
Yeah, probably. We finally gave up on trying to get all the bugs out of it and just sold the thing.
How many track champions did that car win?
I don't know exactly.
It won a couple, I remember that, but I wasn't too sure.
I think probably 3 or 4, 6. My boss said 6.
And then when Mark took over, it did win. Did it win? I know he was always up in the top 5. I'm not too sure, that he won a championship.
Yeah, he won Motordromes and he won Lernerville too.
I think one of the funniest stories that I like to tell about Pee-wee was up at Motordrome, and Mark was running the Camaro in the street stock division. It was one of those nights where nothing seemed to go right on the track, and they'd run a lap, and there'd be a restart, and they'd run a couple, and there'd be a restart, and it just seemed like everybody out there was having problems except Mark, who was leading the race. And Pee-wee started with a full cup of coffee on lap 1. By the time the race was over, the cup was empty, and I don't think you ever took a drink out of the cup. It was jumping and shaking, and your arms were moving around.
I talk too much with my hands, and then my nerves are shot, and always harassing me, and, it's tough on an old fella, Don.
You are always so cool, calm, and collected every time I see you in the pits, except when one of your kids are out in the track, and then it all changes. How many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
A day?
Yeah.
Well, we better talk pot. Not
pot. Oh, my word.
Yeah, by all doctors' theories and everything, I really shouldn't be here because of smoking and drinking coffee,
Pee-wee, in reading your driver profile questionnaire, you really couldn't tell how old you were. I read the whole thing, and I still didn't know how old you were after reading it.
Well, I thought I'd put on there. What did Dawn say?
Well, I'm not going to say any ages or anything, but it's kind of funny because we asked you who your favorite actors were, and you listed 2. The first one was Clint Eastwood. Why don't you tell them who your second choice was, and then we'll know maybe how old you are.
Oh, it was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, right.
But he was acting this year. I mean, so that wouldn't give his age away, right? He's still acting.
8 years of a great performance. And never got an Oscar.
Let's try to be serious if we can. You're being inducted into the Hall of Fame tonight along with Jim Irvine, Sr. and Hoot Martin. This has to be an honor based on the people that are in there and the list of candidates that were nominated this year. You've got to feel really proud.
That's absolutely right, Don. I was, in fact, I was very surprised, and I think I told you that we talked to Mark, and Mark knew about it, and he never said a word to me, and like I told you, a lot of Saturdays I work, and I miss your program. And I come home, and actually it was the day you profiled Mark. I got home as your program was ending, so I didn't really hear anything, and Lois started telling me about Mark, and you said something to Mark about Sargetta coming up there to Lernerville and harassing you, and a little bit later Mark came walking in, and he said about the program, and I guess that was the first time you announced it or something, and I said, no, but your mom was just telling me about him saying I harass him, and so on, and he said, well, no, about the Hall of Fame, and I said, well, what about the Hall of Fame? And he said, well, I was getting inducted, and I said, nah. He said, sure. He said, I've known about it. He said, I talked to Don, but he said, I didn't figure he wanted to say anything. So he said, I never said anything to you. And I said, well, thanks a lot. But that's how I actually heard about it, and it made me feel pretty good at the time.
Well, did he didn't tell you the whole story, because I read through the list, and I'll read it tonight at the banquet. There were 15 or 16 candidates nominated, and I said to Mark, one of the things that your dad has going for him is he's still at the Speedway, and a lot of people know him. And Mark thought for a minute, and he said, geez, that might not be so good. As it turned out, it didn't seem to be a problem that everybody voting still knew who you were.
Pee-wee, I also, not only were you notorious in the track, but you were always such a gentleman in the pits and a caring, sharing person. I remember a certain person's bus breaking down, and you taking the time in the effort to help get this bus back on the road, and I certainly did appreciate that. But you have been a true friend for a long time, and I really salute you tonight, and I'm happy to be with you to watch you be inducted.
Well, thank you, Carol, and I think I know the bus you're talking about, and that guy harassed me the whole time I was working on it down at the garage here, even though he says he doesn't.
That was another story, huh? We could spend the whole 2 hours on that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this year. Last year, we tried to get you into some of the old-timers races, and your mechanic and car owner and youngest son wouldn't lend you his car. Is this going to be rectified this year?
Well, I just found out this week that I guess it is. The fact that Mark's not running his car this year is that he will maintain one for me.
Because when you won a whole bunch of races, then you sort of went into semi-retirement, and we need to get you back out there because Glade Neal and Luffy and O'Connor and some of these guys, they need someone to keep the heat on.
Well, yeah, see, but they started threatening me after his first 2 wins, Don, and I had to back out, you know. Luffy said that I had to let him catch up, and I think he's ahead of me now, so I guess it's safe for me to come back. He'll probably not put a hit on me or anything, you know.
You're going to have an opportunity to see a lot of these guys tonight and swap war stories, and I think probably my favorite part of the old-timers is having a chance to see so many guys that I've watched race, and there's been so many good times with all of the fellas in the Hall of Fame that I'm just glad that the Circle Track's able to do this, because as Carol's mentioned in the past, yourself and the other fellas involved, you wrote racing history in this area, and it's something that we want to keep records of so that the younger kids coming up, when they see some of the drivers and the cars and they hear the stories, they weren't there to watch the races, but they can still experience some of the good things that happened.
One of the big things I always get a charge out of is when we start telling people when we started to race there were no overhead valve engines, and they look at it. What are you talking about? You know? And actually, there were actually no American-produced racing helmets. That's your helmet. I think Cromwell in England built them. They just half a helmet, and the rest was leather straps with ear flaps and so on and so forth.
We've come a long way.
Yeah, you know, and if you don't stop and think about it, and you're starting to talk to younger people, and, you know, that probably when you walk away, they get together and say, hey, there goes a nut, you know.
Pee-wee, you could always, it seemed that before they had the bought chassis, you seemed to know pretty much about the chassis and what it needed going through the turns. Did you study up on this? I mean, you seem to be pretty much around target with the cars and what was going on.
No, what happens there is you sort of learn off the seat of your pants and your fingers, you know. And it's not really complicated. It's just something you have to pay attention to and realize that going around a corner fast enough if you're not winning. If you can stay with somebody on the straightaway and they leave you on the corner, then something wrong. And so you better figure that out and get yourself quicker if you want to get up front.
Can you think of, before we finish up here, I love your sense of humor, can you think of a funny story that's happened to you in the past that would be worth hearing here and sharing with the folks?
That we can tell on the air?
Right.
Well, I don't know. I think, Dawn, you know the one of me playing fence climber. That was probably one of my...
Yeah, I was there.
So was I.
Yeah. Well, we could tell that story. Do you want to tell it?
No, I think you go ahead.
Okay.
You probably tell it better than I do.
That's the only time I ever saw Pee-wee lose his cool.
Right. It was in the early 70s at Motordrome 70 Speedway, and coming out of turn 4, Gene Pennington spun or for some reason left the track, and in relining the race, I think they got you and him mixed up, and there was some sort of a disagreement, and Pee-wee was going to tell the flagman what he thought. Now, the problem was the flagman was up in the flag stand, and Pee-wee was down on the speedway, but he just proceeded to climb right up the fence and have a chat with this fella, and for a while there, I thought more than flags were going to be flying, but cooler heads prevailed, and that's probably the only time I've ever seen him fired up.
You look kind of like Tarzan that day.
I did. I think the heat got to me or something. I don't know, but
Well, it was a mistake, and it wasn't. It was hard to see because of the dust. There was an accident happened, and and it looked as though your car was involved, and in fact it wasn't. And you wanted to get your point across to nobody, and it wasn't registering. So you did what you had to do.
yeah, really, what happened is I spun myself out to avoid the wreck, and not touch anybody, and I think they had a point, but my point was I just rather than cream somebody, I thumped it, and I got irritated.
Pee-wee, we got to run. We want to congratulate you on your induction into the Hall of Fame. We're looking forward to seeing you tonight and present you with a real nice plaque for this. And we want to wish you good luck with your old-timers car for 89.
Okay, Don, I thank you, and we'll see you all tonight.
Thanks again. Quite a character, Carol, and quite a family. Some real nice folks, the entire Flick family from down North Washington, Apollo area.